Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. All right, everybody, welcome back. And you know what time it is on every Friday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am with Candace Plattor. Candace, welcome back. Always love to see you. Always have butterflies in the back. And how are you today?
I'm well. I have a little bit of a cold, so my voice might not be as strong as I'd like it to be, but just bear with me.
Okay, of course we will.
Yeah.
And I know you're in Vancouver. We're down here in New York, and it's we're getting the tail end of this storm or whatever. So it's raining. Are you getting any
Oh,
of that, or what's it like?
no, we're not getting the rain right now. We had snow a couple of days ago, though. It's cold in
Already?
Canada. Yeah, it's a cold country with warm people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My college roommate was from Mississauga. He was a great dude. Do you know what that is? It's by Toronto, right?
Yeah, that's in Ontario. Yeah.
Yeah. I loved it. The people up there are great. I love the Canadian people. I have yet to meet someone from Canada I didn't like.
Oh, I have, but not very often.
So,
Yeah.
Candace, tell everyone what we do at Love with Boundaries.
Yes, Love with Boundaries is my company, and I am an addictions therapist. I work primarily with the families of people who are struggling with addiction. Sometimes we work with the addicts as well when they're ready for us. But we start usually working with the families because there's so much help out there for people with addictions, especially mind altering addictions like alcohol and drugs. There's so much help out there. If you're listening in and you are struggling with addiction, then please reach out for help. Go online, see what's in your neighborhood, in your area. Um, there's a lot of help for you. There's very little help for the families who are struggling and suffering right along with the addict and don't have a clue what to do. And so that's what we do at Love with Boundaries. We don't do anything else. We just work with families who are compromised with addiction.
Uh, Now, how about when people are looking into interventions? I know we've discussed it a little bit in the past, but how do you
Yeah.
feel you do it differently than what we see on TV and stuff like that? Can you talk about intervention for people out there that maybe like, I don't know what to do. I think I want to do something for this, for my daughter, my son. I just don't know what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, intervention. I don't really like classic interventions like the kind that you see on television. I, what happens in those shows, and most of you have probably seen that show, and you have to remember it's made for TV, so it kind of has this fantasy aspect to it. And what happens is that the family basically confronts the addict. So they write letters to the addict and they read their letters one after another. And the addict is kind of going, whoa, I don't like this at all. This does not feel good. Get me the hell out of here. And then at the end of that, um, on television and in other interventions as well, the addict is asked whether he or she would like to go to rehab and get some treatment. What happens most of the time is that the addict will say yes. Every once in a while, they'll say, hell no, and they storm out. But most of the time, they'll say yes because they're feeling really pressured. And the important thing to understand is that their their agreement to go and get help is not coming from inside them. It's coming from the outside. It's coming from the people who love them, but are, I think, mistakenly trying to make them go to rehab, trying to shame them into going to rehab, whatever. Families want the best for their addicts. They love them so much. They remember what they were like before they were addicted, you know, and and so that's what they want for the family. They want that for the addict as well, because living that kind of life is very difficult. So they're doing the best they can, the families, but what they're really doing is they're saying, we don't like what you're doing. We want you to change so that we feel better.
Right.
It's
Right.
kind of what's happening. I'm just going to turn off my notifications here. I forgot to do that. Um, so so what happens after the addict says yes to rehab? Often, um, the addict won't even make it to the recovery house, to the recovery center. They get off the plane before, if it makes a stop, they get off the plane and off they go.
Yep.
Sometimes they don't even get on the plane to begin with, or they get to the rehab, they're signed in, they're checked in. That's not a very fun process. I know because I've been there. Oh, for people who don't know, um, I'm 35 years clean and sober today.
Today?
Not today,
Oh,
no.
okay.
Currently, sorry.
That's okay.
Um, it's in July, my birthday.
It's July. Okay.
Yeah. Um, and that was after a 15-year addiction to opioids, Valium, pot. The doctors weren't giving me pot, but they were giving me all the rest of it.
Right.
And that's because I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. So I was, for 15 years, given all these addictive medications because the doctors didn't know what else to do.
Right.
So they just threw that at me. So I've been to rehab, I've been to detox, I've done it all, kind of
Yeah.
thing. And so when the addict gets to rehab, they're checked in, their luggage is gone through, things are confiscated while they're there. Not a fun process. And often what happens then is that maybe the addict will stay for a few days. And then he's thinking, he or she, he's thinking, I'm not like these people. I don't need to be here. That's a classic line. I'm not like those people,
Uh-huh.
right? So, um, so he leaves against medical advice. And when that happens, way too often, the addict will call home and say, "This place isn't for me." He'll make up some kind of excuse like they bully me, they're really horrible to me, you know, and I need to come home. And the family will send the money to come home.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so the whole thing starts all over again, and the enabling starts all over again. You know, the only way that an addict is going to choose recovery is if he does it for himself. If he gets to the place where he doesn't like that life anymore, there are pitfalls to that life, and the payoffs no longer work. And that's where the family comes in. Families need to learn how to stop enabling, because an enabled addict will not recover. Why should they? If you're going to do everything for an addict, you know, they just won't recover.
Right.
So families need to learn that. They need to learn how, from a place of love, not punishment, but from a place of love, how to do things that make the addicts uncomfortable in active addiction, so that they don't want to stay there, so that they make their own choice about, I want to get help now, I'm ready.
Hmm. Gotcha.
Because it just doesn't work when people try to force an addict in. They're not going to stay there.
Yeah.
Addicts are very clever. We're very clever. We're bright, we're manipulative, we're very clever.
Understood. By the way, we are going to take some questions that you guys have
Good.
written in, and if you want to call in, you can do that. The number is 631 605 6568. You can call and ask your question live, or you can use that instant feedback on the chat. Um, and I usually like your name and where you're from, but in this case, probably best if you just say anonymous, and that's okay too. So just letting you know about that. But let me start off because I have a question for you,
Okay.
Candace. Um, I had a family member that we would call a binge drinker,
Yep.
meaning for maybe a week, 2 weeks, would hit it every day, but then could leave it alone for the next month for some reason. In your book, do you consider the binge person an alcoholic?
Definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Why do you say?
Um, well, sometimes what happens with a binge drinker is that there's a couple of things that could be happening. One is that they want to be showing their family, their loved ones, that, see, I'm not so bad. I can stop. What's the big deal? Get off my back. I can stop. And the truth, of course, is he can stop. So when a binge drinker makes the choice to stop drinking, because it's always a choice underneath everything else,
Yes.
to stop drinking, and then when something happens, something he doesn't like very much, or even, just a broken shoelace, as we call it in the addiction field,
Yeah.
anything at all, it's just, I'm back on the bottle.
Yeah.
But don't be on my back, because I won't be here for long on the bottle. I'm gonna stop again. But it never really stops, because they keep going back to it. They
Right.
keep relapsing.
So that's the addiction right there, is that
That's
they
yeah.
never
And the other thing about this is that addiction really isn't about the addiction per se. So this isn't really about the alcohol or how much he's drinking or any of that. The addiction is really about the need, the pain that that addicts are feeling, that they want to cover up. There's always pain, legitimate, usually. There's, all kinds of reasons and sometimes excuses, and there can be a difference between those, about why an addict uses or drinks.
yeah.
And so we need to get underneath the addiction. It isn't about how much Uncle Joe is drinking and how many weeks go by until he drinks again. It's really about what's happening underneath for Uncle Joe, that he feels like he can't um, really deal with life on life's terms. I've got to escape from this. I can't feel this. I don't want to feel this.
Hmm.
That's what addiction is really about. And I think we've really done addicts poorly, by not understanding that. So we keep trying to fix the symptom, and the symptom is the alcohol. The symptom is the drugs. The symptom is the gambling or watching porn or overspending or all of those. Anything can be an addiction, pretty much,
Yeah.
And as a society, we're not getting underneath to the pain of why people feel they need to do this. We just go on, we go to an addict who's overdosed with Narcan. And that's good. I'm glad we bring people back to life. But the next step has to be, what's underneath this? What's really happening for you? And if that isn't done, which it isn't really being done in most cases, they keep using, they keep drinking, and addiction gets worse and worse and worse. We have a study here in Vancouver, and this is probably similar to many cities across North America, where $5 billion has been spent um, in the last little while, like in the last year or so, um, to help addicts. But really, what they're doing is things like the Narcan, things like safe injection sites, things that are really about harm reduction, which is an okay place to start. But but not to end up, if you're an addict. Like, if you're going to have a good life, you're going to need to be clean and sober. You're going to need to be abstinent, because harm reduction will keep taking you down that path of addiction, because addiction is progressive. You'll keep using more. But they've thrown so much money at addiction in Vancouver, and it keeps
Wow.
getting worse and worse and worse, because
Wow.
we're not dealing with the pain and the trauma that's underneath the addiction.
Wow. So just
It's
dealing with
so
the
simple.
Band-Aid.
Yeah, exactly. This isn't rocket science. It's so simple and not being done.
Wow. I didn't know that.
So
Well,
yeah.
I'd also like to know, how would you define an addict? There are people that they get drunk or whatever, and they embarrass themselves and embarrass in front of the family. I'm thinking about the holidays or something like that. Maybe they do it a couple
Mhm.
times. Um, you have a hard time convincing me that since they act like a jerk maybe once or twice when they drink. Yeah, some people do that when they drink, but I don't know if that's an alcoholic. How do you define an alcoholic or a drug addict, if you can? What would you say?
Yeah, I think because these substances are so addictive, and addiction is progressive. Like I said, it gets worse and worse.
Right.
There, a tolerance builds up, and you need more and more of the same substance or behavior to feel the same wonderful hit, that lasts for a minute and a half. So, um, if somebody came to my house once or twice a year and acted out, drank a lot, got drunk, acted out, I would really wonder about what their motive is for doing that. I don't think I'd consider them an alcoholic or an addict if they're not doing it, if this is kind of the only time they do it. I'd be wondering, is it something about their relationship with me if they're at my house? Is
Mm,
it something, are they trying to get back at somebody? Are they just saying, well, I'm just going to ruin this for everyone? And why would they be doing that? So I'd be curious about that. But if
take it.
somebody uses a couple of times a year and gets loaded, gets wasted, embarrasses themselves, I think they're making a choice to do that,
Yeah.
especially if they make the choice to stop for the rest of the year.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I would not call that person an addict, but I would call that person maybe angry, maybe resentful, maybe feeling something deep inside that's, maybe it's insecurity. Maybe they don't have a lot of social skills and they're coming to an event where they have to talk to people and interact and they don't know how to do that. So they drink and then they take another drink and they're feeling a little bit better, but another one would feel even better. So they take a third drink and they're gone. So it could
Right.
be something like that too.
Yeah.
But no, if they're not drinking the rest of the time or using the rest of the time, I I wouldn't classify them as an addict.
I gotcha. Yeah, because it's that there's an old saying where about steroids. People say steroids make you mean, roid rage, and aggressive and stuff. But if a person is already that way, the steroid's just going to make you a bigger one. So maybe
Yeah,
do you think it's the same way with substances? It's already
kind
there
of.
somehow.
It's already there. Yeah, I was on steroids for the Crohn's. It's horrible. That drug is just a horrible medication emotionally. It's
Oh,
really, it packs a mean punch. Um, but yeah, I mean, people don't have to drink and get wasted or duck into the bathroom for a couple of lines of coke.
yeah,
They don't have to do that if they're not already feeling some real dis-ease, if
yeah,
they're not feeling like I don't even want to be here, because they're angry and rageful, because they're afraid something's going on.
right, yeah. All right, thank you for that. Let me go over to, let's see, Alice in Philly. Should we as the family be Oh, should we as the family keep substances out of the house when someone is in recovery? Yeah, we mentioned this on another one, but Alice, here's your answer. This is important.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you for asking it. We did cover it a few shows ago, I think. Um, you know, it. I think personally, I think it's a wonderful thing to do. If if somebody has an addiction to a substance and your family isn't addicted to that substance, the other people in the family aren't, then I think if you're asking somebody to be clean and sober at your house, you need to take those temptations away.
Mhm.
It's respectful, it's gracious, It has grace to it to do that. So you don't drink wine at your dinner, and you don't have a toke in front of the fireplace after dinner, and you don't do those things if you as a family can do without it. If you've got somebody who's really trying to stay clean and sober at your house, some people don't want to do it that way. They want to have the alcohol there, they want to have whatever else there. I'll say this about that. If you're wanting your addict to change, you're going to need to change too. It's not fair any other way, really.
Mm-hmm.
And to have substances there when you know that the person you love is tempted, terribly tempted by having them there, I think there's something going on in the family. So you might want to consider not doing that this year and see whether you have a better holiday.
Yeah, good idea. Thanks for that. Okay,
Yeah.
here's an anonymous. Why is relapse okay? I think I know what you're gonna say.
Oh, loaded question for me. Um, I don't know who said that relapse was okay. Well, actually, I do. In 12-step programs, especially, they talk about, and at many treatment centers that are 12-step based, they talk about how relapse is a normal and natural part of recovery. And, it's not. Um, I'm 35 years clean and sober. I've never relapsed. I've had occasion to relapse medically, haven't done it, because I make the choice to stay clean in my life today. I make the choice. Relapse, there's another way that people say relapse, and that they call it a slip. So SLIP is kind of an acronym as well, SLIP. So it stands for sobriety loses its priority.
Mm.
And most people who have been clean and sober for a while who relapse, the timing of their relapse is really interesting, because they're not actually relapsing just on that day or at that time. They've already set it up for themselves. They've said to themselves, I think I'm going to use, maybe not today, but maybe tomorrow or the next day or next week. I don't really like this clean and sober life, and nobody will know. And I'm just going to use a little bit of something. And they set it up that way, and they've got that self-talk going on, whatever it is that they're saying to themselves, telling themselves that they really don't have to stay clean. And then usually something happens, like the broken shoelace or maybe something bigger, and off they go and they relapse. Yeah. So what people often don't understand, this is one of my pet peeves, again, that addiction isn't about the actual substance or behavior. Whether you think about it as a disease, 12-step programs think of it as a medical disease because there's brain involvement in addiction, and of course there is. It couldn't not be that way. But if you think about it, there's brain involvement in everything I do. Everything we do as human beings, there's brain involvement. That's how we're wired. It's how we're built.
Right.
So just saying that that addiction is a disease because it has brain involvement, that does not translate for me. They say that it's a disease. They say that we're powerless over that disease. If that was true, there wouldn't be people in recovery. And there are millions of people in recovery all over the world.
Yeah.
And they say that relapse is a normal and natural part of recovery. So you're given sort of permission to relapse, to keep using. Underneath all of that, no matter how you want to see addiction, addiction is a choice. We don't choose to become addicts. I don't think anybody does that, right? We've talked about this before, where people don't say to themselves, "Oh, I think I'll become an addict. That would be fun. Let's be an addict in this lifetime."
Yeah.
No, that's not what happens.
And the addict is not having fun.
And the addict is not having fun. This whole euphemistic thing of we're partying,
That happened a long time ago.
Yeah, that happened at the very beginning when you used Coke on the weekends.
Right.
You know, that maybe you were partying then. But once you're in active addiction, it is no longer a party. It is a horrible way of life, a horrible um, you think about people who have to rob and steal and not eat in order to have money to buy their drugs, and it's just awful.
Yeah.
And are homeless, and their dental work is terrible, their hygiene is terrible. It's awful, right? So um, once we're in active addiction, that's when we actually have a choice point, because I can tell you that I guess I should tell you that I've been an addictions therapist for 30 years. So I've spent 3 decades uh, professionally in this field and 35 years personally.
Right.
And I have never met an addict, myself included, who didn't know, even as they were shooting it into their arm, who didn't know there's something wrong with this picture.
Yeah.
I'm not having a good life. I don't like this life.
Yeah. Well, Candace
And
Platter, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
now I know we're probably out of time.
Yeah,
I,
yeah. But we
I
could
was
pick it up.
I was just going to say that that's when an addict makes the choice. Am I going to stay in active addiction, or am I going to go into some kind of recovery? Am I going to reach out for help? And that happens for every single addict. And every addict in recovery knows that every single day we're making the choice to stay clean and sober. Otherwise, we would not be clean and sober.
Got it. Candace, please let us know how to get a hold of you. Another great show. Really great. Thank you for people who wrote in. I still have some, and we'll get to you guys. But Candace, last words. Let me give it to you.
Yeah.
Please, you have the floor, my
Okay.
friend.
Thank you. My voice thanks you. um, so the way to get in touch with me, and I have a team of wonderful, trained, skilled therapists who work with me. The way to get in touch with us is through lovewithboundaries.com, because we have to love with boundaries. We have to love our addicts, but we have to be strong and clear and do the things they need us to do for them. Not the enabling, but the helping. So lovewithboundaries.com, we offer a free, no strings attached at all, 30-minute consultation. We do this mostly on Zoom from anywhere in the world. So, and no matter where you are, if you can speak English and you're listening to us, you can get in touch with us. All you have to do is fill out a questionnaire. It's a short one. It's the link to that is on the website, and we will get in touch with you right away, set up that 30-minute consultation. You tell us a little bit about what's going on for you. We'll tell you how we work. And if it's a fit, then we continue. If it's not, that's okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Candace Platter, have a great weekend. Hope you're feeling your cold gets a little bit better, but
Thank you.
always a pleasure. And thank you so much. Candace Platter, everybody. We'll be
you.
right back. Stay there. Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.